Hi there, my name is Trolls and welcome to Soundpaint. Soundpaint is an analog style sample engine designed with one single purpose in mind, and that is to shorten the distance from your musical thought to the actual creation. Soundpaint has infinite dynamic layers, meaning that if you play on a normal MIDI controller, you get 127 velocity layers per key, and if you play on a MIDI 2.0 controller, you have over 66,000 velocity layers on a key. But what does that mean in plain English? Well, it means that when you play a piano, which comes for free with the engine, it truly feels like sitting there with the instrument. You can trust Soundpaint, you can trust the engine. There's no more bumps in the velocities and some of the sort of awkwardness we've gotten used to in music software. It's really a musical experience. It feels like sitting there with a real instrument. In this tutorial, I'm going to provide you with an overview of Soundpaint. So if you're a beginner or a newcomer to music, this is an excellent starting point. Coming out of this video, you're going to know everything you need to know about Soundpaint. But if you want to go deeper, we have a handful of other tutorials where we're going to go deep into our rack system, our effects, our Arpeggiator, and our lovely mod matrix as well. But even if you're a pro, hang on to this video here. I'm going to give some unique tips and workflow improvements that can really greatly enhance the speed in which you can make music or design new instruments. So I'll see you inside of the door. Up here in the very top left, we have our settings icon, which contains a subset of different options. For example, in our user interface preferences, you can control the font size of the user interface. So for example, here, if you want to control the font size of your browser, you can do that here. You can also control the font size of your program names here, and you can control the font size of your parts down here as well. This is really designed for those of us who's having a little bit of a harder time seeing things. In addition, the Soundpaint user interface is also completely scalable. So if you go down here to the right corner, you can just drag it and make it exactly as big as you want. This is really neat for those of us who are on Retina displays, where you really want a large, beautiful, super clean UI. Or if you work on a smaller monitor and you just need that sort of smaller print where everything just sits neatly. Let me just pull it all the way up here again. Let me go back up here to the settings again. You'll also find your audio and MIDI settings here. This is where you're going to be setting up your sound card. Make sure you have the right output. You can also set your MIDI controller and other things. Library management is where your instruments are installed. This is mostly done automatically, and if you ever have doubt whether you have the latest instruments or the latest updates, just go down here and click Check Library Purchases. You're going to see the engine quickly ask our server, hey, have I bought anything, or are there any new updates available? And in this case, you can see there is. If I click yes here, it's automatically going to open our downloader and automatically install the library or the update for you. It's really neat that way. To the right of settings, we got Save, Shop, and Account. Save will let you save your own program creations. So for example, if I have a piano here, I probably would save it on the piano and then click the yes icon here. Shop will take you to the Soundpaint store, and Account will take you to your personal user account. And down here, we have our factory library and our user library. You can always type anything you want in the search field. So for example, let me just type in 1928 piano, which comes for free with the engine. And boom, you'll see that you immediately have all the programs available for that instrument. You can also use our more advanced search system here. If you click this magnifying glass, it'll take you into our tagging system. This offers you the ability to do more advanced searches for instruments. So for example, is it played by one player or is it an ensemble? Is it an acoustic or electronic instrument? What kind of pitch does the instrument have? Or things like instrument categories, emotions, so what type of emotion does the instrument evoke? All the most common music genres. And then a bunch of sound techniques down here as well. These are all the different ways you can play instruments. You can also search by room type and microphone type. All instruments in Soundpaint come in the form of programs. And programs are made from parts, which can be any part of an instrument. For example, this beautiful 1901 upright piano, actually the same model that Beethoven used to sketch on, you'll see that it's made from 3 different parts doing different types of things to the instrument. Let me just show a little bit of a performance here. You're going to hear a little bit of a unique attack on the note. That's part 3 here, which sort of generates a more felt kind of vibe to the instrument. Soundpaint is organized by different instrument categories, which combined offers a universal coverage of all instruments in the world, both known and unknown. These categories are also identical with the Soundpaint website, so there's a one-to-one correlation, so whatever you see here is exactly identical on the website. You can quickly find the programs you want by browsing these categories here, or simply by typing them up here in the search field. So for example, let's say I want a Jupiter 8 Arpeggiator. You're going to see it's isolated to sense down here, Jupiter 8, and now you can access them. You can also click the library tab here, and that will give you an exclusive selection of what you're searching for. So for example, when I write Jupiter 8, it's going to show me all the Jupiter 8 patches. If I write 1928, it's going to show me all my 1928 patches. And here is a unique workflow tip for Soundpaint. Let's say that you find yourself lost in a bunch of different hierarchies. If you double click on any of the main categories here, and you're now out in your root hierarchy, you can also left click the library tab here and go into single mode, which will list all programs in alphabetical order. And the entire same premise goes for parts. Everything is organized in the same way, so you have the same categories and instruments within them. But let's try to make a brand new program made out of parts. I'm gonna go up here, hover over this X, and you're gonna say it says clear program, just left click it. And now you can see Soundpaint is completely clean. So right now I'm gonna look for the 24-string zither, which I really love. You can see it's on the guitar here, and you will find the different articulations here. In this case, just the muted. So that in itself is a good instrument, but let's say I want to add a little more to the zither. Let me just try to load the sustains here as well. Okay, that's nice. Let's add a little bit from the free 1928 piano as well. In this case, maybe our staccato notes on top of it. So you can see it's really, really fast to build instruments. Let me try to make another one. In this next one here, I want to build a program that is synthesizer based and is using 10 synths together. We actually went into this giant hall and put 10 analog synthesizers in the hall. In this case here, they'll be playing sine waves together. So I'm just going to type in 10 synths and immediately access them here from the directory. Let me note this one here, 10 synths sine. That means that the 10 analog synthesizers were all playing sine waves in the big orchestral hall at the same time. Now let's go into our effects section here and choose any of these slots. I'm going to start with the first one here. I'm going to click on it and then go down to reverb. you're going to see we have a variety of different effects. In this case right now, just for the example, I'm going to take our reverb shimmer, which is this big cloud-like reverb. So let's say that I really like this one and I want to save it. Just click on save up here, choose what category, this would probably be a synthesizer, and click yes here. And you'll notice that the engine just took us into user mode and you can find your patch down here. And if you really love something in the engine, just click the heart here as well. You'll now notice that there's a heart down here. We call this function favorites. So for example, if I go back to factory here and I click the heart, it's going to show all my favorite programs immediately under factory. And if I go into my user, the one we just saved, you'll see that I'm going to find my user programs in here as well. So factory programs, user programs. You get the point. It's wicked easy and fun to make instruments in Soundpaint. One thing we spent a long time on in development was to refine load times. I don't know about you, but for me, I just sometimes feel uninspired having to sit and watch my DAW load instruments. In the case of Soundpaint, that's different. Let me load here the 1928 Steinway, which comes for free with Soundpaint. This is 127 velocity layers on every key. Check how fast it loads. I'm gonna click now. And as you can see, I can pretty much not really register it even loads. It's maybe 1/3 of a second. Let me just do that again. I'm gonna clear up here and click now. And you can see it's really loading in real time and it's fully playable. It's not like loading while you see the screen. It's actually fully completed. We do recommend using solid state drives for the optimal Soundpaint experience. That's what I'm doing here. But as you can see, load times don't really exist in Soundpaint. Here is 100 instances of Soundpaint. You can see how quickly the number is going here. It's virtually in real time. It might take a total of 10 seconds, something like that, to have the template loaded. You can see it's just wrapping up here and we're pretty much good to go. But let's go back here and take a closer look at parts. So we have programs up here and the program is made from parts. In this case, we have 2 different parts making up for the piano here. Each part has identical controls. You can adjust the volume of each part here. You can adjust the tone. Think of that as the tone knob on a guitar, sort of changing the characteristics of the instrument. To the right over here, we got M pitch, which is micro pitch, so within a semitone. And then we have normal semitone pitch here. You can actually go crazy deep on it if you want, really make some unique sounds. But let's try to load another part. I'm gonna click up here and clean the entire user interface. I'm gonna type in Belgium here, and that's gonna take me to one of my favorite libraries called Beautiful Noises, where we went to 25 different countries and recorded all the sounds of them. So in this case, a bunch of different sounds from Belgium. Every single key on my controller is going to trigger a different sound. Let me just play you a couple of the sounds from Belgium. Okay, let's say that we really like the sound of the nuns doing their night prayers in Belgium. That was the last sample we just listened to. Click this icon here, and now you are in sound mode. Sound mode allows you to do a variety of different things to the part. You can reverse the sound, you can choose the key range. So for example, you can have a bass in a certain lower part of your keyboard and then another part with a piano at a different key range. So you can have 2 different sort of instruments overlaying. But we also have this thing here called one note stretch. One note stretch offers you the ability to isolate one single key on your keyboard and play that across the entire range of the keyboard. So let's say, for example, I'm going to take the sound of the nuns and play it across my entire keyboard. I essentially just hold down the key with the nuns and now it's fully playable on the keyboard. But let's say we want to take the nuns and mix them together with another instrument. In Soundpaint, all instruments or parts live together, so you can freely take up to 4 different instruments or parts and blend them together. Let's click brass here and access the 66 trombones and add them here to part 2. Okay, so that's sort of where we are with today's samplers. We can mix instruments together. But Soundpaint has an alternative, perhaps more radical way of blending waveforms together, namely in the form of our morphing function. If you want to morph anything, just make sure that you have two parts loaded and then click on one of these icons here. Right now, the nuns are the dominant part and the brass have to conform to the nuns. We can also reverse that. So right now the nuns have to conform to the brass and the sort of tonal characteristics of the brass. And it's cool because even though the nuns are just whispering, they actually get tones in their whispers because the trombones have that tonal characteristic to it. So you can do crazy unique things. In fact, you don't just have to morph different sounds or instruments, you can also morph music into an instrument. In this next example, we're going to listen to a small band in Chile playing stringed instruments. And here on the other side, we have our 1928 grand piano, which is also my personal studio grand, with original strings from 1928. It's a very beautiful and soulful piano, and as you probably know, comes for free with Soundpaint as well. But instead of just mixing them together, let's try to morph them together. As you can hear, the music from the band is conforming to the character of the piano. You can really morph anything you want in Soundpaint, and sometimes it just generates wild and unexpected results. For example, the buzzing, deep soundscape of the Amazon rainforest morphed together with a big symphonic choir. All right, moving on. Below the parts section, you're going to find our rack, our effects, our ARP, and our matrix. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we do have dedicated videos for all these 4 individual elements of the engine. You can really go deep into either of them, but let me just run through them quickly here. Racks is one of the more advanced features in Soundpaint. You don't really have to use them at all, but they can be fun for power users that want to control more aspects of the instruments, whether it's things like ADSR or LFOs, which can be really useful for mangling acoustic instruments or synthesizers. Or it could be our touch rack, which lets you set controls over your pitch bender, monoglide, velocity sensitivity on your keyboard, and so forth. The effects section is our sonic candy store. But in essence, you got dozens of analog modeled and custom effects that can completely transform the character and timbre of your instruments and sound. Whether it's an old British Bucket Brigade tape delay, or perhaps a delay that emulates rain. Or perhaps 12 different analog modeled distortion models, each model represented by a weapon of choice. Or the choice between 3 analog model filters, in this case here, the true state variable. Or the choice between 5 distinctively different types of reverbs, everything from modern granular type of reverbs down to old school vintage plate emulations. We also have a variety of other unique effects. For example, bit brush, chords vintage, a really excellent musical compressor, an incredible gate effect, old school analog phaser, stereo imager, and so forth. To the right of our effects section, you'll find our Arpeggiator, or the ARP. Let me just click my favorite symbol up here and find a really beautiful ARP to demonstrate it. And what better than an old deep sample Juno 60? But the Soundpaint ARP is not your traditional ARP, though it has all the usual features you'll find in Arpeggiator. For example, we added intervals to it as well. So the ARP will be going not just in octaves and what you play, but also add additional intervals in it. Let's try a 7th here. Over here to the right is the matrix, and this is only where experienced sonic travelers should go. The matrix essentially lets you control every single aspect of Soundpaint. You can pretty much wire everything together. But if you're relatively new to music software, just take the blue pill and forget about the matrix for now. You don't really need it. But if you are curious about the racks, the effects, the ARP, and the matrix, ensure that you watch the additional tutorials we have for each of those. Down here in the very bottom, you can see how much Soundpaint is taxing your individual core. Most computers today are multi-core based, but each instance of Soundpaint only uses a fraction of a single core. You can also customize the overall theme of Soundpaint down here, whether it being our default night theme, or perhaps switch it to the day theme, which is much more on the brighter side of things. And there you have it. You now have a degree in Soundpaint. I like to think of it as fast, furious fun. It's light on the surface, but deep underneath for those who wish to go there. The Soundpaint engine is also free without any form of commitment. We are also offering our 1928 piano, which I demoed in this video here, for free with the engine, so you can safely try it, feel it, and see if it's for you.